Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Parallel Session 3 of the 7th International Language and Language Teaching Conference in this Zoom meeting. My name is Hannah. As moderator, I am a 7th semester student of English Language Education Study Program. I will be in charge of this parallel session. Before we start, please let me read the rules for you. First, each presentation will last for 15 minutes. Second, 3 presentations will be delivered in a row. Third, we will have Q&A session after the presentations have finished. Fourth, other rules can be found in the program book. And I would also like to inform you that the chat box is opened for you to address your questions to the presenters. And you may address your question by typing your name, underscores affiliation, underscores to whom the question will be addressed, and then followed by your question. So there are 3 presentations in this room. Will be delivered by Dwi Yulianto Nugroho, Titis Pahargian, and Katarina Brameswari, and Almira Ghazani Sabrina Romala. So without further ado, let's start with the first presentation entitled Nursing Students' Experiences in Learning Speaking Using 432 Technique During COVID-19 Pandemic. It will be delivered by Mr. Nugroho from Pelita Harapan University. Mr. Nugroho, you have 15 minutes. So without further ado, Mr. Nugroho, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you so much, Hannah, the moderator of this parallel session. Well, good morning, everyone. I thank you so much for attending my session. Please let me introduce myself. I am Dwi Yulianto Nugroho, a faculty member of the Faculty of Nursing, Universitas Pelita Harapan, Karawaci, Tangerang, Banten, Indonesia. And in this occasion, I would like to disseminate my research findings entitled Nursing Students' Experiences in Learning Speaking Using 432 Technique During COVID-19 Pandemic. And in my presentation, I would like to present the research background and also the research methodology that I have used. And also I would like to present research results, and finally I would like to close with the conclusion and also recommendation for future research. Let me first begin my presentations by presenting the research background. So with the increasing number of international visitors and workers coming to Indonesia, it becomes an urgent need for nursing students to be able to speak English. It is because they might probably take care of international patients when they work in a hospital in the future. And during the treatment, the patients deserve to get good services from nurses. As what Patty and Potter and Perry 2011 stated, that nurses must provide nursing care to all patients. It means nurses must take care of all patients regardless their nations, origins, or ethnics. Moreover, nurses also have a role as an educator. So they will share or teach information or knowledge to other parties, such as nursing students or their juniors, peers, patients, and also the patient's family members who are considered as learners in here. According to the World Health Organization, or WHO, nurses must have communication competency to play the role as an educator anyway. It means that language will be used as a means of communication, and therefore being able to speak English becomes an avoidable path that nurses must experience, and nursing students must prepare it because English is considered as international language. So, and here it's very important for nurses and also nursing students to be able to speak English. However, speaking English is very challenging for some students. And this case was also noted by Ibu Yohana Feniranda during her keynote speech yesterday morning, that speaking is very challenging, especially during this COVID-19 pandemic period. And students do not only have limited linguistic competency or competence, but they have also psychological factors, which then make speaking more difficult and challenging. I would like to present several research findings why speaking is challenging. The first one is from Schumann 2002. There are several factors which make speaking becomes challenging. The first one is the age. The next is oral medium, sociocultural factors, and finally affective factors. In addition, Heriansa 2012 stated that limited vocabulary, low confidence, and also a habit to speak English becomes the factors why speaking is challenging. Zuriani and also Yusuf in 2016 stated that students have nothing to say. They trigger to use their mother tongue, have low motivation, and have limited vocabulary. Aber et al. In 2018 stated that language barriers, learning proponents, learning environments, and psychological factors such as anxiety, attitude, and lack of motivations become the factors that make speaking is challenging. And therefore, Johnny stated that in order to make students want to learn English, they have to be motivated. And in order to be motivated, they have to be less anxious students. Therefore, it becomes the role of for the teachers to create supportive and also accepting learning environment in the classroom. And it, as what I have stated before, that teaching speaking is very challenging also, especially during COVID-19 pandemic. The government of Indonesia decided to move the face-to-face classroom into online learning since March 2020 anyway. And this is not a pure online learning anyway, because this is conducted in a crisis situation, in an emergency situation. That's why emergency remote teaching in here is more, I think it's quite appropriate to be addressed in this kind of case, in this kind of period. Charles et al. 2020 stated that emergency remote teaching is a temporary change in instructional delivery to an alternative delivery mode because of the crisis situation, the COVID-19 pandemic situation anyway. Therefore, the students and also teachers face a sudden change, and they have to make a very quick adaptation to this kind of new situation. So teaching speaking and also speaking itself, learning speaking itself are very challenging in this moment. And there are several challenges of conducting emergency remote teaching that I have found. Atmojo and Nugroho recently conducted a survey or conducted a research interview to teachers and also students. Teachers stated that lack of preparation and readiness, difficulties to teach moral values and strengthen the emotional bond between the teachers and also the students becomes the challenge of conducting ERT during COVID-19 pandemic. Meanwhile, from the students' side, they stated that having unstable internet connection, low digital literacy, and being unable to afford sufficient internet quota for online learning becomes the challenge of conducting ERT. Seliava added that technical problem, lack of computer knowledge, and students are not motivated to participate becomes, or added the challenge of conducting ERT in this kind of pandemic situation. However, we have to spread out the optimism, like what the government of Indonesia have already responded towards this kind of difficulty. Like the government give a kind of support, and they subsidize teachers and also students for the internet quota. And not only that, the government also decided to reopen not only in green zones, but also zero zones schools. They're allowed to reopen for face-to-face learning under strict health protocols. So this is a good news. There are a lot of techniques that can be employed in speaking classes. And one of them is 432 technique. In the context of speaking, 42 techniques was first developed by Maurice in 1983, whose purpose is to improve language learners' oral language fluency. Baringa and also Master 2017 pointed out that the main features of 432 techniques are incorporating repetition, preparing before speaking, using familiar and motivating topics, and imposing time limits. There will be speakers who will deliver the same content, the same content. That's why I put the same color boxes in the rounds of speech to different listeners in 3 rounds and with decreasing time allotment for each round. So they have 4 minutes for the first round, 3 minutes for the second round, 2 minutes for the third round. But they deliver exactly the same content to different listeners. Um, and many people stated that using 4-3-2 techniques in speaking classes is quite promising because it will develop the students' speaking fluency. Not only that, it's also developed the students' accuracy, and Nations in Campbell 2013 added that it's also a kind of encouraging techniques to motivate students to learn speaking in speaking classes. Again, I would like to emphasize on the repetition task in this case. There are several studies that have proved that 4-3-2 techniques is quite useful in speaking classes. The first one, this technique improves students' oral fluency. The second one, it improves the students' linguistic accuracy, complexity, and also appropriateness. And the next one, it gives students control over their content and also motivations to talk in English. So it has been proven, empirically proven by several researchers anyway. In my classroom, I adopted the 4-3-2 techniques in my speaking classes. Like I changed the time. Instead of using 4-3-2 times, I use 5 minutes, 4 minutes, and also 3 minutes. Because at the time, I assigned my students to deliver a kind of poster presentations where they have to deliver health educations to their audiences, such as their patients or their peers, their juniors, something like that. So I adopted the 4-3-2 techniques into 5-4-3 techniques. So I assign my students in a synchronous meeting by Zoom or through Zoom. And I ask my students to become the speakers, listeners, timekeepers, or commentators at the same time, at a different time anyway. I automatically assign the students to the breakout rooms. So it's automatically, not manually, because it will make me easier anyway. And my role as a teacher is to move from one room to other rooms just to monitor the students to make sure that the students are in the right track anyway. So this is my technique at the time. And the purpose of my study is to investigate the students' experiences, the perceived benefits and also challenges in learning speaking using the 4-3-2 techniques during COVID-19 pandemic. So I would like to know their voices, their feeling after they learn speaking using 4-3-2 techniques during this kind of pandemic anyway. Because the previous the previous studies only investigate the students' achievement. Most of them employed the experimental studies. In this case, I would like to know from the students' point of view. And the research methodology that I have employed is a qualitative approach. And I involve 95 nursing students in advanced classes. So in my faculty, we divided the classes into two. The first one is the regular one. The second one is the advanced one. Depends on the results of the English score when they took the entrance test anyway.
Sorry, sir.
Yes?
Your time is 4 minutes left.
Okay, for me, I will go quickly. Okay, and the instrument that I used was the students' reflective journals, as stated by Hatch, that this is a kind of powerful way to get another take on the the participant's perspective. And then the data analysis, I refers to Creswell 2003 qualitative research data. I read the journals, highlighted important points, and finally drew themes based on the information. And to fulfill the ethical procedures, I asked my students permissions to include the participants' reflective journals. And I would like to present the research results. In here, I asked the students to evaluate on their performance, and they stated that their performance in the third round was the best because they are already familiar with the content of the presentation. They are more confident and more accurate in this case. I have provided several excerpts in here that the students stated in their reflective journal that they become more aware and understood where they were wrong the first and also second round. And then here, the benefits that I took from learning English using that techniques is that they can improve their speaking fluency. Of course, in here, the students said that in the first round, I spoke haltingly, nervous and stiff. In the second one, still stiff, but it's clearer. But in the third one, she was able to speak faster and more fluently anyway, because of the repetition. And the second benefit that the students stated that the techniques helps them to convey important points only, because sometimes it's very important for nurses or nursing students only to talk the important points, just to help the patients, to get recovered quite soon, because they are delivering the health education in this case. So here, student H stated that this technique teaches us to focus on the important points only. And then, yeah, as you've result 2018 stated that this techniques helps the students to control over the content. The next benefit is that improves students' confidence to speak, because they are already familiar with the topic that they have been delivered in the second and also the first round. So they feel that they're more confident with that because of the repetitions effect. And then the next, it improves the students' linguistic competence, of course, especially the students, or most of the students emphasized on the pronunciation improvements anyway, like because of the repetition, of course. Like here, the student stated that she's more able to pronounce the word, a difficult word like diarrhea. So here she stated that I am fluent in saying the word diarrhea after the third round, or in the third round anyway, because of the repetition. And the last one is that still linguistic competence. Here, I would like to emphasize on the feedback. So I asked my students to give feedback on their peers' performance anyway. So the linguistic competence improves because of the feedback. And then the next benefits that the students stated that this is a fun, enjoyable, and a motivating technique that the students want to learn more and more using this technique, because this is new and also challenging for them. So it's considered as a fun, enjoyable, and motivating technique. And I asked them whether they would like to use this kind of technique more in the future or not. And 100% of the participants stated that they want to use it for future practice, speaking practice. It means that they are more motivated and they become more autonomous learners anyway. So this is a very good news. And the students' challenges that they found, they got the difficulty in manage the time, because they have to think fast to manage the time in 5, 4, 3 minutes. And then the next one is the internet connection, still happening. And the third one is about the vocabulary limitation. And the conclusions, the techniques improves, or the techniques is a promising alternative techniques to teach speaking during this COVID-19 pandemic, because the students got support for the internet quota, and including Zoom. I think Zoom is Zoom is also free for the quota given by the government. And they stated that they have already got these 5 main benefits after using the technique. And for the future research, I suggest the future researchers to conduct a kind of mixed method research design, like they are not only investigating one part, like the students' voices or also achievements, but they conduct a kind of mixed method research design where they investigate the achievement and also the students' voices after the students learn speaking using 432 technique. And finally, thank you. Yeah, this is the end of my presentation anyway. Thank you for listening. If you would like to ask me, you can ask me during the question and answer sessions, or we can make a kind of correspondence through email or Instagram. These are the references, and I would like to give back the time to the moderator, Hannah.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Nugroho. Thank you for your engaging presentation about the 432 technique to enhance speaking skills or speaking class. Okay, so to the second presentation, it is entitled Students' Anxiety in Speaking English During Distance Learning. It will be delivered by Titis Pahargian from Kristen Petra 1 Senior High School, Surabaya. For the presenter, you have 15 minutes. So, Ms. Pahargian, the floor is yours. You may start, Miss. Miss Pahargian, are you still mute your voice?
Okay, is my voice clear?
Very clear.
All right, thank you, Hannah. And dear participants, thank you for your participation here. And in today's occasion, I'd like to present my finding about students' anxiety in speaking English during distance learning. And I'm Titis Pahardian speaking here from SMA Kristen Petra 1 Surabaya. For today's presentation, I'd like to explain about my background, the background of the study, and then the literature study, and methodology, and the fourth one, finding and discussion, and as the last part, it will be conclusion. So we all know that in the middle of March, COVID-19 pandemic hit Indonesia and the whole countries in the world. And I think the government responds fast to this pandemic by um, asking the teachers, the school institutions, and students to have working from home and learning from home. And to support that situation, the Indonesian government created a policy to handle the pandemic, especially in the education field. The first one, they create Surat Edaran nomor 3 tahun 2020 about the COVID-19 prevention in the education unit. And then the second part, it's Surat Edaran nomor 4 tahun 2020 about the implementation of the education policy during the emergency period of the spread of coronavirus disease. And by that point, the educational institutions switches or shift into the type of learning. The previous one, we used the conventional one when where the teachers and the students have a face-to-face meeting. But then after this, during this pandemic, teachers, school institutions, and the students use the e-learning or the LMS such as Zoom and then a WhatsApp group and then Google Classroom, Schoology, and so on. However, its implementation doesn't always go well, especially in English class in or speaking skills. In my case, in SMA Kristen Petra 1 Surabaya, as a teacher, I found out that I asked the students to have a presentation. The theme is about countries and culture, where they would have had a presentation about it. And on the D-Day, I saw them to be anxious for their presentation in their online class, even though it's an online class. And after that, on the evaluation day, I asked the students to have a self-reflection. It's in the form of writing activity, the reflection. And the teacher found out that they were anxious in delivering their ideas using English. That's why in my research here, I intend to discover the first one is what is the students' anxieties in speaking English during the distance learning. And then the second one is that how do they cope with the anxiety during the distance learning? Here I have definition about a foreign language anxiety is defined as the feeling of tension, as the feeling of an apprehension, which specifically associated with a second language context, such as reading, speaking, writing, and listening. And here, according to Horwitz and Co. 1986, there are three types of students' anxiety in a foreign language classroom. The first one is about communication apprehension. Um, it is shown by the students are stuttering in delivering their ideas. It also a type of shyness characterized by fear or anxiety in communicating with other people. And it also shows that the student has difficulty in understanding others and making oneself understood. That's the first types. And then second one is the fear of negative evaluation. The student shows that they avoid the evaluative situation. They think that they should have the positive impression on others' eyes, and they sometimes also think negatively about their peers, that their peers will see him or her as an incompetent one. And the last type of the student anxiety is the test anxiety. It means that the anxiety is stemming from the fear of failure. They are afraid of making mistake during the presentation. And why is speaking in English is one of the productive skills. It means that the students produce the skills, and it also demands the students, the learners, to have a huge courage and confidence in conveying the message. And this is my theoretical framework where I worked in my study. The first one is Types of Anxiety in Foreign Language Learning by Horwitz and Co. And then the second one is Comparisons of Students Speaking Anxiety During Distance Learning by Amici in 2014. And the third one is Ways the Students Cope with the Anxiety During Distance Learning by Kondo and Young, as mentioned in He to 2017. And the last part is the teacher's role in reducing or minimizing the students' anxiety in an online English speaking class by Caracas in 2018. And for the methodology, I used a case study, as I mentioned before, a case in my class. It's a kind of ethnographic research study focusing on a single unit, an individual, a group, or a program. And then the setting, it was conducted on September 18th, 21st, and then 23rd of in 2020. And the participants were 36 science students in the 10th grade. Actually, if I see the cognitive ability of the students, they are good enough, they are great in speaking, but um, during the presentation, the tension was bigger. And for the instruments here, I used the first one is the student self-reflections. I provided some questions to the students to be answered. And then after that, I distributed questionnaires, a close-ended questionnaire, and an online interview because I couldn't see my student in a face-to-face meeting. And I conducted the interview to some of my students in class. And about finding and discussion, the first one is types of anxiety in foreign language learning during distance learning. Here I used the scale proposed by Horwitz and Co. It's called a foreign language classroom anxiety scale. And the researcher found out that the biggest anxiety encountered by the student is about test anxiety. They were afraid of making mistakes during their presentation day, and uh, the fear of failure was bigger than other anxieties. And fear of negative evaluation uh, was in the second position, and then the last anxiety is about communication apprehension. And let's looking at the comparison between distance learning and face-to-face meeting proposed by Angie here. And I found out, the researcher found out that the students were more anxious to speak in distance learning rather than have a chance to speak through face-to-face meeting.
Sorry, Miss Paharkian, your time is 4 minutes left.
All right, thank you, Hannah. And this is five ways how the students cope with their anxiety. It it shows that the preparation got the biggest proportion here. They prepared really well for their group work for their presentation day rather than this one resignation. It means that the students were doing nothing for their presentation. And other parts is relaxation, positive thinking, and peer seeking. It means that the students looked for other peers to practice together in presenting their ideas. Here is one of my students' self-reflection. That was my first time in presenting in high school, let alone virtually. Besides my well-being, I was more concerned about any technical difficulties that might have happened. For the presentation, I had to create a Zoom room and learned to maneuver screen sharing every single day. So we can see here that she practiced a lot to have a Zoom room alone. And here, what can teachers do to reducing the students' anxiety in speaking class? The first one is that even though it's the least part that got the least proportion, teachers and peers as the can be a supportive partners for the students in class, and then encouraging and praising their efforts and their attempts, and then teacher tolerates mistakes the students made, and then the teacher can create a supportive class environment, and then as the last part, the teacher should provide feedback after their work, and it will help the student. And here, what can teachers do? As I mentioned before, there are at least 5 points here. And uh, this is another student. She complimented our work so that it helps me suppress my anxiety. So I end my presentation with the conclusion. The first one, there are types of anxiety that the students encounter during the distance learning in an English-speaking classroom. And then each student has their own ways on how they will cope with the anxiety coming up. And then the last one, we as a teacher in a classroom plays a significant role in to reducing the anxiety of the students in a foreign language classroom. So everyone, here is my presentation, and thank you for your attention. And thank you, Hannah.
Thank you very much, Ms. Pahargian, for your insightful presentation. So now, before we move to the third presentation, I would like to remind you that you may address your questions in the chat box. Okay, now we are going to have the third presentation entitled Students' Perceptions on the Implementation of E-Learning in English Conversation to Class during COVID-19 pandemic. It will be delivered by Katarina Brameswari and Almira Ghazani Sabrina Romala from Sanata Dharma University. For the presenters, you have 15 minutes. So Miss Almari and Miss Romala, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Hannah, for the opportunity. So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. In this occasion, my name is Almira and my partner is Katarina. We are from Universitas Sanata Dharma, and in this 7th LLTC, we are going to present our study entitled Students' Perceptions of the Implementation of E-Learning in English Conversation 2 class during the COVID-19 pandemic. So the background of the study is that in English Conversation 2 class is one of the subjects in English Letters Department, Universitas Sanata Dharma. And in this class, listening and speaking are two fundamental skills taught in this class. And students will master these skills effectively if it is taught in an incredible way. And before the pandemic, the subject was conducted in multimedia laboratory and in class. In the listening class, students are assisted with the tools and computers in the laboratory. Moreover, and the teaching and learning activities during the speaking class also needs direct face-to-face interaction. Nevertheless, e-learning and distance learning is used to substitute this face-to-face learning. It is not possible to do the face-to-face learning as the COVID-19 pandemic. Therefore, based on these issues and problems, we investigated the students' perception on the implementation of e-learning and also our learning management system in our university. It is Belajar SD during the COVID-19 pandemic. And the students' perception, we cannot separate e-learning from traditional learning. And it is also used to complement the conventional or face-to-face learning, but not to substitute in the beginning. But in attempt to decrease the spread of the coronavirus, in the English Conversation 2 class, we have the e-learning method, and in this e-learning, both the teachers and students' motivation to use this is affected by the perceptions. So perception is a part of learning processes which starts from the usage of senses in accepting the stimulus. So before the COVID-19 pandemic, the usage of the e-learning might be fun and exciting for students. Conversely, after a few months of using the e-learning method to replace the conventional learning, perhaps their perceptions, the students' perception, and also the teacher must be different. Later, the implementation of e-learning to substitute conventional learning must be reviewed, and the researcher refers to the students' responses and perceptions toward the teaching and learning processes during the COVID-19 pandemic study from home. It is conducted to find the ideal form of e-learning activities that are needed by the students. So students' perception toward e-learning are needed to help the researchers to find out the answers and the solutions toward problems that exist due to the COVID-19 pandemic, particularly in English Conversation 2 class. And the method of our study. So in investigating this issue, we used a Google Form questionnaire as the instrument to summarize and also to measure the attitudes and opinions of the students toward the implementation of e-learning and the use of LMS in the conversation class. And it was done in the last semester, in the even semester of the academic year 2019 and 2020. And the questionnaire contains several statements related to the activities outside and inside the classroom, the effectiveness of the e-learning, and also the LMS in the English Conversation 2 class, And we adopted a Likert scale, so there are 5 options to respond to every statement. And it has also blank space for the students to write their opinion for reason. And the samples of this research is 120 students who took English Conversation 2 class in the English Letters Department of Universitas Sanata Dharma. From the population, there are 180 active students in the second semester. And in collecting the data, the questionnaire was distributed at the end of the semester. And it was analyzed by calculating the percentage and also rate the responses of each item and the new comment that could give a notion towards the implementation of the e-learning method and also the use of Belajar USD learning management system in the English Conversation 2 class. And the findings and the discussion from our analysis will be delivered by Ms. Katarina.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Almira, for the opportunity. So let me explain the findings and discussion of our research. As explained earlier, so it looks not just at the gain factor, but more at the ability and preparation of everyone within an organization, whether from policymakers, lecturers, and students. And here there are two parts of findings. The first one is the student's self-reflection. Let's move to table 1. Here, table 1 illustrates that most respondents in the study agreed that the use of e-learning during the COVID-19 pandemic helped them to improve their listening skills. The students also thought that e-learning during this condition could improve their speaking skills. And from table 1, the researchers concluded that the students believed that e-learning might improve their listening and speaking skills, and then pronunciation, grammar, and vocabulary. In table 2, yes, here we can see that most respondents in this study thought that the implementation of e-learning was less convenient than face-to-face learning. It illustrates that integrating all forms of media, print, audio, video, and animation made teaching and learning more effective. Though the students knew that e-learning could increase their listening and speaking skills, here in table 2, it illustrates that most students could not decide if e-learning activities were more effective than the traditional learning activities. With the table 3, here in this result, we can see that half of the respondents might not decide whether or not the implementation of e-learning could help them to be more independent during learning processes. It is in line with the data from table 2 that the students were not sure if e-learning was more effective than the face-to-face learning. Okay, let's have the second part of the result. In this part, the researchers show the students' perception on the usage of e-learning during COVID-19 pandemic. And in table 4, we found that the students were satisfied with the e-learning class and followed the class smoothly. However, this did not guarantee if students would not meet any problems during this semester. It can be seen that students also experienced technical problems related to the internet connection and also the internet speed during their study from home. In table 5, it shows that students' perception of the implementation of e-learning, it shows that students were ready to this implementation, but the majorities of the respondents felt that e-learning strategy had improved their opportunity to access and use the class content, and they also argued if teachers' online instructions were easy to understand. In addition, the web resources and materials given in this class were also helpful. In table 6, it is the last table from the findings. It shows that most respondents mentioned that their teachers would help them if they encountered a problem using technologies during the e-learning class. The students also underlined that e-learning class helped them to be more independent during the teaching and learning processes. However, most of the respondents prefer to have face-to-face learning after the COVID-19 pandemic ends. move to discussion. Here, the data highlighted that the respondents gave various answers to e-learning in the English Conversation 2 class during the COVID-19 pandemic. Most of them gave a positive response to the implementation of e-learning. And the students also taken the questionnaire. It is mentioned that even though they learned English skill virtually, they could still increase their speaking and listening skills. Nevertheless, they prefer to have face-to-face learning than e-learning because it is more convenient for them. And during the e-learning activities, they felt that communication and teacher-students engagement were somehow disturbed. Thus, meaningful and engaging learning activities during this situation should be increased. Not all students had good internet access to join the English conversation class, and this problem makes students feel more isolated than in offline classes. And due to that condition, their teachers need to encourage them by giving their hands during their difficult time.
Sorry, Miss, your
Yes.
time is 4 minutes left.
Okay, thank you, Hannah. In the advantages of the implementation of e-learning, accelerating work, growing efficiency, improving performance, increasing performance, and then efficiency and making work more accessible are the advantages felt by students during the e-learning process. And this finding shows that students consider e-learning to be simple, and the lecture materials also uploaded easily. Furthermore, in terms of contact with students and each other with lecturers, e-learning is often useful so that discussions can take place. Let's have the conclusion. Yeah, there are 3 points that we draw from the research. So this research concluded that students find e-learning to be helpful and useful in improving their performance. In the future, many people put their highest hope to e-learning to help coping complex problems of the teaching and learning process after post-COVID-19 pandemic disease. And the findings obtained from this study indicate that the need to incorporate a proper structured LMS should be designed to meet the learning curriculum needs of the students who enjoy the potential benefits of e-learning resources and further inspire and empower them to use e-learning more efficient. And the recommendation for the stakeholders and also for the future researchers that teaching methods should be constructed efficiently, and also the improvement need to be done so that it can prevent miscommunication and misinterpretation during e-learning. And we also hope that the lecturers may use only 1 or 2 online platforms during e-learning, and future studies on teachers' perception can be explored more during the COVID-19 pandemic. And this is our presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. We are open for insights, comments, and suggestions for our research. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Miss Almira and Romala, for your enlightening presentation. So we have listened to our 3 presentations today. Both are insightful for us to enhance both speaking and also listening skills and class. So now it's time for questions and answers session. You may address your question directly by clicking on the raise hand reaction or icon, or as I said before, you may also address your questions in the chat box by typing your name, underscores affiliation, underscores to whom the question will be addressed, and followed by your questions. Okay, here I think we have already one question in the chat box addressed to Mr. Nugroho. It is from Miss Ati Herawati from Unpak. Okay. The question is, how did you manage the 4-3-2 technique during... Okay, Mr. Nugroho. May I read the question for you? Yeah.
Okay, please.
Okay, the question is, how did you manage the 432 during the breakout room activity? And then did you set the time for each room? Did you manage the students' talks? Like, for example, in conversation, do you assign who should talk to who, like that? Okay, you may answer it now, Mister.
Okay, thank you so much, Hana, and thank you so much for Ibu Ati Herawati from Universitas Pakuan Bogor, if I'm not mistaken. All right, and it's this very interesting questions anyway. Like this is the thing that I really consider before I employ this kind of technique. Like I would like to share the things that I did in the very beginning of the semester. Like I emphasized on the vision, like what Zoltan Journey has instructed or has inspired me, the importance of vision anyway. Like I really emphasize the importance of commitment during online learning or emergency remote teaching classrooms anyway. Like they have to manage their own time. I mean, the students have to manage their own time, and they have to be committed towards the learning process that the teachers or the lecturers are going to instruct them. Like they really understand the need of learning English. In the future, they need to take care of their patients, regardless their origins, ethnic, religion, something like that. They have two options: whether they would like to heal, they would like to help the patients to heal. They want to heal the patients, or they want to let the patients suffer anyway. So they have such kind of motivations. So they are really committed during my classroom, and in addition, we have already got the emotional bond. Like last semester, they were also my students. That's why I gave them autonomy and also trust to to help each other, to follow the lessons that we are having during these kind of crisis situations. So I assign my students to Zoom breakout rooms. I ask them to decide who is going to speak first, who is going to present first. While somebody is speaking, I would like to assign one of the listeners to become the timekeeper. So I didn't set the time for them. So I asked their peers or their classmates to set the time for the presenters. So they exchange the rules afterwards. So in here, I would like to emphasize the autonomy and also trust that I would like to give to my students. Although I need to make sure that the students is on the right track, that the students are doing the things that I am instructing anyway. And that's why I also move from one small room or breakout room to another rooms to make sure that the students are doing the things that I am asking them to do. So I told them, please be committed, please, what's that? Use this kind of opportunity, because this is quite rare anyway in a situation like this, in a crisis situations, to meet in one room, to speak up, to help each other anyway. And at the end of the sessions or the round, I give notification to all breakout rooms to go back to the main room, and we give feedback and also sharing from each other. But if some students haven't finished presenting, they may continue and then join the breakout room afterwards. So in here, I emphasize the autonomy and also the trust between each other anyway. Okay, I hope it helps. It answering your question, Ibu Ati. Thank you, Hannah.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Nugroho, and thank you, Miss Ati, for your question. Uh, I think from Mr. Nugroho's presentation, 432 techniques has also helped us in coping with some challenges of speaking learning activity. And also, I'm also interested with Miss Pahargian presentation, and I really want to ask a question. It is that before you mentioned that one of the way to cope with the challenges is by to cope with the student anxiety, sorry, we should tolerate mistakes. My question is, in your perspective, to what extent should we tolerate the mistakes? Okay, that's my question, Miss.
All right, thank you, Hannah, for the question.
Yes.
Um, during the presentation day, is my voice clear, Hannah?
Yes, it is clear, Miss.
Right, thank you. During the presentation day, um, we believe not only the students, we also as teachers, as you as the university students, when it comes to speaking, uh, I believe that the tension is getting bigger when it um, comes to your turn, right? And that's why during the distance learning, they presented their PPTs, and they started to present their ideas. That's why one of my students mentioned that when she saw my face and then others' faces as well, um, everything that what she had in mind suddenly what go and disappear. And that's why as the teacher, we need to understand that kind of situation arising at that time. And my strategy is that as the teacher, understanding them is by what staying silent when the student presented their ideas without intimidating them with stop, 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 or can you repeat more? I can't hear your voice. Just let them go with their presentation. And in the end of the presentation, um, I give a small note for the students, and not by intimidating, oh, you mispronounced this, or no, it should be this, or comparing the students' performance. No, in my case, the tolerance will be like, okay, thank you for your presentation, and later we will discuss the mispronunciation of yours, or maybe the performance that uh, some parts of the performance that you need to improve, something like that, so that maybe other students will feel finally, like
Okay,
something like that.
I see. Thank you very much, Miss Parkin, for your answer. Okay, we have one more question from Miss Reza. Mr. Reza, I'm sorry, Mr. Reza from Mahidol University. It is directed to Miss Almira and Katarina. So he asks for you to specify what kind of online learning platform that you used, and then he found that the kind of platform might influence their perception, and also that he is having difficulties understanding the statistical data. Maybe you can present it in a more simple way, but I think because we are running out of time, it is better to answer the first question first about the specificity. Okay, you may answer it now, Miss.
Okay, for the platform that the student used in the conversation class, we used our university language learning management system. It is called as Belajar USD. But at that time, the capacity is not that big, so we use another platform as a support to support this our conversation activities, such as we use Padlet and also Flipgrid, and the other lecturer also decided to use Edmodo instead of Belajar USD. And for the specification of the items presented in the table, the correlation between the items and also the implications will be answered by Miss Katarina.
I'm very sorry because we have reached the time limit for this question and answer, so we cannot continue the answers. I'm very sorry for Mr. Reza and the presenters, but we have provide the emails of the presenters in the program book. So if you have any further questions, you may address it directed to them through the email. Thank you very much. So before we end this parallel session, we may take a picture together. So if you don't mind, please show your beautiful and handsome faces. Okay. I will count 1, 2, 3, and then the operator will take the picture. Will take the picture. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Second page. 1, 2, 3. One more. Okay. One more time. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Is it enough? Okay. Thank you very much for the wonderful presentation and also the enthusiasm in this session. Now you may move to another meeting room to join the next parallel session in 11:30 in the Western Indonesian time, or you may also stay in this meeting room. So by that being said, it's the end of parallel session 3. Enjoy the rest of the conference. See you and goodbye.
Thank you, everyone. Have a nice day.
Have a nice day, Mr. Nugroho.
Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you,
You're
Hannah.
welcome.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Hannah, too.
Thank you, Hannah, and all the committee.
You're welcome.